nothing to beat it. I bet they don't have nothing finer than this plum down in Knoxville. Say, yous wouldn't mind if I took my shoes off, would you? It was a long walk from where I live. Whew, that sun was hot. Wasn't so bad till I got up over Old English. That's the second peak over there, you know. Right below Agger Rock. Well, I live pert near the top. That's a fur piece. Yes, sir, it's the right fur piece. I don't get to town much, except if one of my kin got a wagon load of wood to sell. Maybe I can catch a ride with one of them and find out what's going on. Why, it must have been spring of the year before I knowed Mr. Taft had been voted in president last November. Me and my brother George, we like to come down sometimes and see if we can get a look at one of them automobiles. Seen one once or twice. Not counting a few what's out in the churchyard tonight. Well, that's why I was a little late coming in. I was looking at them up close and I touched one. But that's not why I come here. No, indeed. I come here to give an offering. To me, it's a real special offering. It was kind of your preacher to let me testify first and get on back. I know you all got a lot to say, but he said I could say my piece first and get on back. Then I got to walk so far. Well, like I said, I come here to give an offering. I wanted to give it in a real church house. Well, see, we got us a church a ways up the mountain, but it's a schoolhouse excepting on the Sabbath. It ain't got no altar or nothing. I can worship in it, but it don't seem quite right somehow after all these years. I mean, I done sat in that building the whole 6 years of my education, and I was still kind of like a youngin' in there. Like I ought to write my sins down on a slate or something. No, offerings laying up there on the desk like an apple for the teacher just ain't right. My ma wouldn't have stood for none of that kind of talk when she was alive. She said any ground could be holy ground. And I guess that old God's ground was holy to her. Shucks, she could love stuff right out of the ground. She could mother her a brood of cucumbers or maters like she was the vine itself. Why, Kentucky wonders climbed her poles like a black snake up an apple tree. She put up mess after mess of beans and things and fruit jars and laid them by in the shed, row after row as God prospered her. The first in every 10, that was her tithe. She took it to the schoolhouse on Sunday to help the Lord feed the needy. Seemed like a pretty good idea to me. I didn't really think on it much. It's just something a body done. First fruits, the preacher called it. It's just a way of life. Besides, there's always plenty left for us. I love my mom's green beans better than anybody. I had born anybody too. Never tasted nothing no finer in my life than my mom's green beans. Maybe there was something about that ground. Well, what Grandma did in the garden, she walked, birthing babies. And I figured them was holy walks. Well, she midwifed every baby born on the mountain for years. Never lost but one twin. Two if you count the other twin. Well, its mother never lived to birth it, and it died inside it. Thing was, the onlyest mother and baby my mom ever lost was her own kin. That was my sister Jane. Pretty thing. She lived plumb the other side of the mountain. See, the pains hit her early, and she plumb up to Ma's because her man weren't home to fetch her. He's off on a logging run. Oh, he was good to Jane. She was mighty pretty. He liked to buy her nice dress-up things, hats and gloves and things. He liked to never got over it when she died. I liked to never neither. After my first grief, I got all riled up with God himself. I stomped my feet and I hollered at him. Well, I hollered at Mama. I know he was listening. What kind of God you got anyway? For years you've been traipsing all over this mountain, helping other folk. Is this your reward? Is this what you get? Are you telling me God couldn't do nothing to stop it? The stuff you've been telling me about, God didn't hold to it when it come right down to it, did it? Tell you something else. Oh, your grown age been giving your first fruits to the Lord. Well, I guess it weren't enough for him. I guess he wanted the first of your grandbabies too. It ain't right. Ain't right. Well, Mom, you made me go on back to church. I never again could sing Power in the Blood. I watched her die. And then one day, Charlie come by. I liked his looks, and he was sweet to me. I was up and took up with him. Shamed my mom. What'd I hear what she said anymore anyway? Her and God was just like that. And I didn't believe in no merciful God no more. I was surprised how easy it was to ignore it. I mean, I didn't get struck down by lightning or nothing. Charlie was God enough for me. And I worshipped him. He gave me this ring. Shucks, probably ain't no real diamond. But I was true to everything Ma ever taught me about love offerings. I'll give Charlie the first of my day and the first of my night. The first of my energies was spent doing for him. When I baked, the first batch of sweets was his. When I cooked, the first and biggest helping went to him. And when he went off that spring to Nashville to better himself, I was the first one to wish him well. And the last to know he weren't never coming back again. All them things I done for him, I guess they weren't enough. But the fair birthing babies was just too keen. Well, I never let on none like it bothered me when Charlie didn't come back. Let me tell you what I done. My pa told me this story before he died about getting a hand-me-down winter coat. Well, it's about 3 sizes too big for him, but he's not making him wear it anyhow. Well, every morning when he'd get outside of the house, he'd take it off and he'd hide it in the woods because the kids had made such fun of it. And then he'd walk the rest of the way to school in his shirt sleeves. In the evenings, he'd find it and he'd put it on and he'd wear it back in the door at home. Well, that's how I done my love for Charlie. I was thinking about it the other day. When I went out in public, I'd hide my love at home so nobody'd laugh at me. Then when I got back, I'd wrap it around me like a big old coat, pull my head down inside the collar and bury myself. Trouble was, it didn't have no warmth to it no more. Felt about as warm as Paul's coat must have felt to him after it laid in the woods all day. Sometimes I put on this hat and I'd dance around and I'd pretend that I was a fine lady with a handsome beau who thought I was the world in all. Trouble was, pretend only lasts so long. About the middle of the night, a feather bed can get about as cold as a creek bed, and a pillow about as wet. And God can seem about as deaf as a creek stone. Well, I guess y'all think I'm going to tell you that some big miracle took place and I come to my senses. Well, that ain't the way it was. To tell you the truth, I didn't have no choice when winter come but to go on back and live with Ma. It ain't like mountain folk to turn a body away when a body is in need, but still they can be stern when a body gets wronged. I knowed I'd hurt Ma. That's why I hadn't been to see her all that time. I dreaded going back. I don't know what I expected exactly, but it was anything but what I got. When I crossed that log, I can see her now. She whooped and slapped her thigh like she'd done, till she stood there grinning and hugging me as tight as she closed one of them mason jars. And I'd sealed it too. Long as she lived, she never asked no questions. She never laid down no rules. She never once let on the hurt I done caused her. You can't even conjure how good that first plate of her green beans tasted. Well, everybody else had done left the table when I took out my third helping. And I looked up and she was watching me. And she just whooped and slapped her thighs. I kept waiting for the new to wear off and bitter to start seeping out. I mean, she'd done lost a whole lot more than I had. How could she go on being so blame happy? I kept watching for her to pounce on me like a hen for Sunday dinner. I just couldn't conceive of her going on loving me as if nothing had ever happened. It was more than I could conceive of. It bothered me right smart. Caused me some wonder, too. I mean, if I liked the way she was, and I did, I admired her to no end. And if living with God made her that way, and she weren't sour on me, how could I be sour on God? I come there ready to stand my ground. But folks, there ain't no arguing with that kind of love. It don't quit giving something because it loses something. Well, it was painful as birthing any real baby. It took a spell longer. Gradually, a new spirit was born out of me. Healthy. Like Paul says in the Bible, first they give their own selves to the Lord. Well, I went on back to church and started giving my first fruits to the Lord, the first and 10 of anything I got. And I studied herb medicine, and I even got to where I could watch Mom midwife once or twice before she died. I've been right proud of myself. And then another day I was sitting up by the water trough. See, we got this log hollowed out and laid in the woods where there's this little drop off. It's a nice spout where we catch our drinking water. And I was sitting up there pondering, and it come to me just as clear. Now, ain't you something, Sarah May? You think because you're a tither, you got this giving thing sewed up neat as a flour sack. Well, you see, what I got figured out is this. It's one thing give the first of something you got to the Lord. But it come to me that a real